Hello, everyone. So, we are here again with another power packed session, again in this exclusive Hindu editorial based exercise that we are going to, obviously perform together. So, today's class is about inferential question stems. Now, again, this is another very, very important question stem that you might have seen in your exams, in your even mocks, and all the assignments that you might have undertaken so far. Now, the thing is, when it comes to inference, the idea is very simple. Inference is something which is indirectly implied. Okay, so just try to consider it as, a chef cooking something where he has all the ingredients and he kind of makes it into a delicious, food delicacy. Now, the thing is, you also have all the ingredients basically. The writer has given you all the hints. Basically, you need to tie those hints together to make something meaningful out of it. A very simple example would be the writer would say something like, the room was dark and it was only surrounded by the sweet glow of the screen, and the people were sitting in their respective seats, and I was just waiting for my friend to come with um Coca-Cola and popcorn. As soon as I saw my friend, I gave her a huge smile. So, what exactly is the writer trying to imply? He hasn't really mentioned that where is he sitting. He's basically sitting in a theater, right? And we can understand it by all the hints that have been given to us by the writer. And that's exactly what inference is all about, something which is indirectly implied. You might have seen questions like, what is the underlying concern of this passage? That is also a question based on inference, right? You might have seen questions like, all of the following are true except, or maybe what can be or can't be inferred in a passage. Again, that is something which depends on how writer has tried to, weave the story, and whether you are able to, judge his hints and make it into something extraordinary. So that is what today's session is going to be all about. We are going to discuss inferential questions. Again, we are going to see two of the passages which have been taken from the Hindu editorials. And again, I'll be giving you some time to click a picture of the passages so that you can read it at your own pace. And I'll start with the explanation. Right? Let's get started with the first passage. Please click a picture. And this is the second part of it. Now let's try to understand what the writer is trying to tell us in this passage. So we get to know that in July 2025, businesses that provide, services in India, सर्विस इंडस्ट्री के बारे में बात हो रही है, जैसे बैंक्स हो गए, इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज हो गई, होटल्स हो गए, etc. And they kind of grew like आप बोल सकते हैं lot faster than usual. And if we look at the past records, it has grown at आप बोल सकते हैं at an immense rate, and that is a good thing for all of us. And this happened because more people, from other countries also, wanted to use their आप बोल सकते हैं services, and people in India also kept using them too. So not only did we have a local consumer base, but we also had foreign parties which were interested in our products, and that is what kind of increased the popularity of these goods. Then moving to the next part, which we get to know that there is this special number which is known as, यहाँ पे भी दिया हुआ है, which is also known as the HSBC. HSBC India Services PMI. PMI basically stands for Purchasing Managers Index, as you can see here, right? Which tells us how well the services industry is doing. And इसमें हमें एक चीज समझ में आती है कि if the number is above 50, that means you are doing exceedingly well. So that is again a piece of good news for all of us, क्योंकि हमें पता चला कि in July it went up to 60.5, which earlier used to be 60.4. That is still a little increase, but it's a good news for all of us because we are doing really well. And this also means that the service industry is doing very well since the past 4 years straight. Again, अच्छी खबर है हम सभी के लिए, सब कुछ अच्छा चल रहा है when it comes to service industry. Then moving to the next part, which we get to know that one big reason for this growth is what? So that the thing is, अगर किसी भी एक इंडस्ट्री को आप बोल सकते हो हाईली सक्सेसफुल होना है, तो दैट मीन्स द स्केलिंग ऑफ दैट प्रोडक्ट शुड ऑल्सो बी डन दैट वे. तो इसका मतलब बहुत सिंपल सा है कि अगर ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा लोग उस चीज़ को यूज़ करेंगे, ऑटोमेटिकली द पॉपुलैरिटी ऑफ दैट प्रोडक्ट इज गोइंग टू ग्रो. सो हियर ऑल्सो व्हाट हैपेंड इज वी सॉ that more and more people abroad started using these services, started taking these services from us. And that's the reason that happened like somewhere around perpetually for an entire year, which resulted in us being successful in delivering these services. So also, even though ये जो आप बोल सकते हो नए businesses हैं, new business in India, the idea kind of grew a little slower, but still आप बोल सकते हो it still stayed very very strong, very very robust. ठीक है. Now, moving to the next part, as we can see, now this was also helped by, क्योंकि सबसे पहले तो एक अच्छी चीज़ ये थी कि हमने एडवर्टाइज अपने प्रोडक्ट्स को बहुत अच्छा किया और हमने नए कस्टमर्स भी ढूंढे. सो दैट ऑल्सो वर्कड एज अ हाईलाइट फॉर अस. Okay, we were like really keen on advertising, and we were also really keen on finding new customers. ठीक है. So moving to the next part. Yes. So as you can see here, out of all the services, अगर हम बात करें तो finance as well as insurance company जो हमारी है, जो banks हैं, insurance providers हैं, यहाँ पे they started they like आप बोल सकते हो they started with the most amount of growth. ठीक है, उनको नए businesses मिले, नए customers मिले, also they could actually scale the services in the way they wanted to earn profits. तो यही देखा हमने. वहीं पे हम अगर एरियाज लाइक रियल एस्टेट देखे, बिजनेस सर्विसेज देखे, तो दोज एरियाज काइंड ऑफ ग्रू, बट दे ग्रू स्लोली. अगर आप कंपैरिजन करोगे बैंक से, इंश्योरेंस प्रोवाइडर से, तो ऑब्वियसली उनकी ग्रोथ जो थी वो उतनी ज्यादा आप बोल सकते हो नहीं थी इन कंपैरिजन टू द अदर इंडस्ट्रीज. फिर उसके बाद, even though the business was really running smooth and good, companies did not really hire new people. अब उसका रीजन क्या हो सकता है? ऑल्सो वी सॉ दैट जो आप बोल सकते हो जो हायरिंग थी वो पिछले 15 महीने में सबसे कम थी. ठीक है, दैट मीन्स लोएस्ट ऑफ द हायरिंग टुक प्लेस इन ओवर अ ईयर. नाउ व्हाट कुड बी द रीजन? उसका रीजन ये हो सकता है पॉसिबली कि द इंडस्ट्रीज आर जस्ट बीइंग वेरी वेरी कॉशियस about taking the next steps. They are right now focused on expanding their industry rather than just hiring new people, right? So expansion is on their mind, and hiring new people probably is not so much. And moving forward, हमें ये भी पता चलता है कि at the same time जो prices है it also went up. This is because अगर हम देखें तो cost to buy food also increased. अगर हम देखें पेइंग फॉर, अगर आप ट्रांसपोर्ट भी ले रहे हो तो वो भी इंक्रीज हुआ. सेकेंडली, व्हेन यू हायर न्यू वर्कर्स यू हैव टू पे देम अ लॉट. तो ये सारी चीजें जो थी उसका उसी का रीजन था दैट द प्राइसेस वेंट अप. Now, since companies had to pay more, they also charged more from their customers, because how else are they going to bear the, आप बोल सकते हो, bear the credit or bear the लॉसेस. ठीक है, तो ये इसी से ही होगा कि कंज्यूमर से ही आपको ज्यादा चार्ज करना पड़ेगा, तभी आप ये सारी चीजें मैनेज कर पाओगे. तो कंज्यूमर से इन लोगों ने ज्यादा पैसा लिया उन प्रोडक्ट्स के लिए, उन सर्विसेज के लिए. एंड ऑल्सो वी गेट टू नो दैट इफ प्राइसेस वर गोइंग, आप बोल सकते हो, a little too much on the higher end, it might also affect what the Reserve Bank of India decides to do with interest rates. तो अगर प्राइसेस बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ गए तो फिर आरबीआई का भी कहीं ना कहीं इंटरफेरेंस या इंटरवेंशन हो सकता है. That is basically how the number ठीक है। जैसे कि यहाँ पे भी बात की गई है, आई थिंक द सेंट्रल बैंक इज एक्सपेक्टेड टू होल्ड इट्स रेपो रेट स्टेडी एट 5.50%. So we need to keep in mind different things here, right? Yes, so we kind of see that it definitely becomes a little too difficult to borrow money. Like right now, all the experts are of the opinion that RBI is going to keep the rate same, which is 5.5%. And ये भी देखा जा रहा है कि maybe it might, in August meeting, but it might lower it a little bit later this year. तो ये भी पता चल रहा है कि आने वाले समय में हो सकता है जो रेपो रेट है वो थोड़ा सा कम भी हो. Still, the companies are feeling optimistic about this entire scenario, about their own future. So what we get to see is, they feel that these company owners, they feel that through smart advertising, through new technology, through gaining new customers and doing businesses online, I think they are going to enhance their current situation. Also, when you look at both the service as well as the manufacturing industries together, the Indian, अगर आप फिर से वही बात करें, the Indian composite PMI also went up a little, which is again something which is a very positive sign for us. From 61.0 in June to 61.1 in July, which again is the strongest growth reported since April 2024. So that again comes across as a really positive sign and आप बोल सकते हो positive effect of what we have been doing. So that is what this passage is all about. Let's see the first question now. So the article's discussion of employment trends alongside robust demand suggests which underlying concern. पहली बात तो robust का मतलब क्या होता है? Robust basically means something which is very strong. ठीक है? So when we talk about discussion, oh sorry, yeah. So when we talk about the article's discussion of employment trends alongside robust demand, तो एक चीज समझ में आती है कि employment has not been parallelly growing. That means they are not really hiring new people. And what could be the reason? What could be the underlying concern here? So companies are confident about long-term growth prospects and expanding aggressively. What do you think? Should A be the answer? It kind of contradicts the whole soul of the passage. Why? Because had the companies been confident, they would have hired new people, right? जब आप अपनी लॉन्ग टर्म ग्रोथ के लिए ऑलरेडी ऑप्टिमिस्टिक हो, you know everything is going your way, that also means that you hire new people because there is optimism in the market. So this contradicts the main point. Firms are cautiously optimistic. Exactly. That's what the passage suggests. They are optimistic, but they are cautious about it. That means they are not all in currently. They आप बोल सकते हो they are in a state of alarm क्योंकि कुछ भी गलत भी हो सकता है. So they are kind of keeping themselves prepared in advance. So firms are cautiously optimistic, prioritizing efficiency over expansion despite strong current performance. सो एक तरीके से आप बोल सकते हो कि वो एफिशिएंसी पे ज्यादा फोकस कर रहे हैं ओवर एक्सपेंशन. एक्सपेंशन इन द सेंस दैट दे आर नॉट रियली हायरिंग न्यू पीपल हियर. Then the services sector is experiencing a skills shortage. Nowhere in the passage it has been mentioned that there has been a skill shortage and that's the reason they are not hiring new people. So it's something which is not mentioned anywhere. And if you look at the next one, employment policies are restricting companies from hiring more workers. Again, this is something which is not mentioned anywhere, that they are creating restrictions and they cannot hire new people because of employment policies. So the last two pointers are not really mentioned. Option A contradicts, so the obvious answer is option B. That is an inference which we can draw after reading the passage. कि जो firms हैं वो बहुत ही cautiously optimistic है, वो 100% optimistic नहीं है, वो थोड़ा सा डर डर के कदम ले रही है. ठीक है? Right now they are focused on improving their efficiency. They are not focused on expanding in the sense they are not hiring new people. Right? Moving to the next part. The relationship between inflation pressures and RBI's expected policy response implies what about India's current economic balancing act? So agar if we look at option A, the central bank prioritizes growth over price stability in current economic conditions. Actually shows that the central bank is preferring growth over price, whereas when we look at the passage, it actually gives equal preference to both growth as well as price stability. So that's the reason option A will be eliminated. If you look at the second one, monetary authorities face a delicate trade-off between supporting growth and controlling inflation. That kind of looks like the correct answer. Let's try to understand how. The passage very clearly states that any sort of inflation practice, is going to directly impact RBI and their policies. So यहाँ पे एक चीज बताई गई थी, for example, यहाँ पे एक चीज थी कि any acceleration in inflation could affect the Reserve Bank of India's monetary policy decision making, and how they were also expecting a cut in the upcoming quarter. So that means this directly impacts the balancing act, and यहाँ पे वही बोला गया है कि monetary authorities face a delicate trade-off between supporting growth and controlling inflation, sorry, because it directly impacts RBI's decision making, and that is the reason why they have to have a balancing act, right? Option C, interest rate cuts are inevitable regardless of inflationary pressures in the economy. Inevitable means something which is bound to happen. And that is the word that makes it extreme. This is an extreme word because the passage states only conditional. ठीक है, conditional aspect of it. What does that mean? Conditional expectations. It hasn't been said to be inevitable. ये एक conditional expectation है कि ऐसा हो सकता है depending upon the condition. और inevitable का मतलब होता है something which is bound to happen, like death. And that's the reason why option C will be eliminated. The services sector's performance has no bearing on central bank policy decisions, whereas the passage clearly states it has a direct bearing on central bank's policy decisions, and that is what is contradictory in option D. So the best answer, because this is contradictory, so the best answer is option B itself, right? Let's see the next passage. I want you to click a picture of this. And this is the last part. Yeah, let's try to understand what this passage is all about. It starts with discussion of Socrates to Bertrand Russell. And all these smart people, from time to time, we also call them philosophers, from time to time, they have been trying to answer the big, deep questions like what is justice? Why are we here? And they kind of also help people see, when an idea doesn't really make sense. So, एक तरीके से आप बोल सकते हो clarity provide करने के लिए philosophers have always been keen, right? Now the thing is to do this activity well, the people uh, who have spent years practicing different ways of thinking, like using clues to figure something out, या आप बोल सकते हो even inductive reasoning बोल सकते हैं उसको यहाँ पे, क्योंकि inductive reasoning के बारे में भी बात होती है. So also starting from facts to reach a conclusion, which is known as deductive reasoning. तो facts से start करके आप अपना एक conclusion निकालते हो, ठीक है? Now the thing is, even if one is not a philosopher, learning how to think logically can actually help solve problems, in a much better way. So कैसे? क्योंकि logical reason जो होता है वो आपको एक rational इंसान बनाता है. So people use smart shortcuts in thinking called heuristics. तो यहाँ पे heuristics की बार बार बात होती है. This is the word that we are looking for, right? So basically, these are smart shortcuts in thinking called heuristics in lots of areas. Now, areas like poetry, like art, like math, for example. तो यहाँ पे जैसे कि आप बोल सकते हैं, a poet might move lines around in a poem to make it better. An artist might, keep trying different strokes to get them just right. So आप बोल सकते हो कि they are trying new things to make things clearer, right? So philosophy is kind of useful in many different ways, like a bright LED light shining across a room. So it actually helps you to become enlightened, right? Also, अगर हम देखें यहाँ पे, it helps us to build strong arguments where conclusions actually make sense based on the facts we start with. बट जो ह्यूमन बींग्स हैं उनमें एक बहुत बड़ी वीकनेस भी है. सो वी ऑफन स्टॉप थिंकिंग फॉर आवरसेल्व्स. दैट इज आवर बिगेस्ट वीकनेस. इंस्टेड we follow leaders without actually asking them questions, and that is where we go wrong, and that can be really dangerous, like when politicians make bad choices and no one stops them. And that is something which we have been doing, right? We are not really asking them questions, we are not holding them accountable. So still, philosophers aren't really perfect creatures. ऐसा तो कहीं नहीं बोला गया था कि they are always perfect. No, they aren't always perfect. Some have bad beliefs. For example, अगर हम Aristotle की बात करते हैं, he thought slavery was okay. Now, obviously, we all will beg to differ, right? Then there was Heidegger, who supported bad political ideas like Nazism. And again, I think not everybody is on board with Nazism in today's world. Then there is Kant, who believed that logic hadn't changed since Aristotle. But then Russell later provided him, but Russell later actually proved him wrong. Then we talk about Descartes, who said that older ways of arguing were just empty words. So आप बोल सकते हो कि even philosophers aren't always perfect. They also have some really flawed ideas in their heads. So just being logical does not really mean you are being philosophical, right? तो इससे एक चीज तो क्लियर हो जाती है कि आप लॉजिकल हो, इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि आप फिलोसफिकल भी हो. So true philosophical thinking, अगर उसकी बात करें, it means that something that makes you deeply curious. You also do not hide away from asking the harder questions, and you are basically wanting to understand, not just going through every motion just because everybody else is doing so. So you ask, you are curious, you basically hold the other person accountable. Every day people might be logical in different situations, simple situations, but when it comes to big and messy problems, ठीक है, it actually needs deep philosophical thought and also a reflection. ठीक है, तो arguing, debating इन सारी चीजों में isn't really about beating someone. It's about thinking more clearly and also avoiding being fooled. So that is what logical thinking is primarily all about, right? So we get to see here that's what the passage suggests. And moving to the questions now. The author's criticism of intellectual complacency implies that, first of all, let's try to understand what complacency is. It means a state of inactivity, where you are too happy in your comfort zone, where you are too satisfied with the current situation. And what does that mean? Intellectual complacency. तो क्या आंसर लग रहा है इसमें? Let's see. Out of these four options, there are two options that have extreme words, and that's where those options get eliminated. So the author's criticism of intellectual complacency, इसका मतलब है कि you are blindly following other people without questioning them. And that brings me to the correct answer also. Blindly following others without question hinders societal progress. This is the correct answer. Philosophers are the only people capable of sound reasoning, whereas the passage says everyone can be a logical thinker. He simply does not limit it to just the philosophers, that only philosophers are capable of sound reasoning and not everybody else. Voters should always support incumbents. Again, voters should always, always is an extreme word, right? And what's the meaning of incumbents? It basically means that voters should blindly support the office bearers, यानी कि politicians, whereas the passage actually states contradictory to what is given here. उन्होंने बोला है कि politicians को blindly follow मत करो. Instead, you should ask them, you should hold them accountable, you should ask them questions, how they are operating. So this is contradictory. Heuristics are less valuable than strict rules, whereas the passage actually talks about how heuristics are highly worthy, not devalued. So the opposite is given. So this is opposite of what is given in the passage, right? And when the author contrasts Aristotle's and Russell's views on logical progress, it primarily suggests that. Let's look at the first one. All philosophical claims are equally invalid. Only Kant's claim was deemed invalid. Not every philosopher's. And that's why option A is eliminated. It has an extreme word all. And in the passage, it's only Kant. Kant's claim that was deemed irrelevant. Okay. And moving to the next one, option B. Intellectual traditions can be challenged and overturned over time. Yes, exactly. So basically, when Russell proved Aristotle wrong and also Kant's assertion of no progress, इससे एक ही चीज समझ में आती है कि they are not really immune and they also can undergo revisions basically. So यहाँ पे एक ही चीज समझ में आती है कि intellectual traditions can be challenged and overturned over time. That means it can be revised and changed. So yes, that is exactly what we are trying to understand here. When the author contrasts Aristotle's and Russell's view on logical progress, it primarily suggests that intellectual traditions can be challenged and overturned over time. Ancient logic is superior to modern scientific methods, whereas the passage actually builds upon the modern way of thinking, and it definitely does not prove that modern logic is actually inferior to ancient logic. So, something which is contradictory to the passage. And option D, Russell fully rejected Aristotle's contributions. Again, a very extreme option. He did not really fully reject it, he just refuted Kant's limited claim. Fully reject Aristotle's contributions. So, उसने Aristotle की entire philosophical legacy को reject नहीं किया था. He simply refuted Kant's limited claim. So that is the reason why these cannot be your answers. And that brings me to the end of today's session. So as you can see, today we have touched base with a very important question stem, which was inferential questions. In the next class, we are probably going to just revise whatever we have done in the first two sessions, and let's see whether you are able to identify, your mistakes and identify the evidences that you can refer back to from the passage. And that's it from my side, guys. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll be seeing you soon. Bye bye.